something or someone, the greater our strong or attachment becomes to that object or person. Those who practice Vairagya may say that if you take some sense objects, someone of the opposite sex, for example, and try to see them through a large magnifying glass, they will not look so beautiful. Such persons ignore the way we are created. Sangaste supajayate, sangat sanjayate kama. A person first meditate and then develop attachment, sanga. When attachment is developed, then comes calm. Calm means our intelligence is set to work. It means desire, just 1 minute, it's creative. Desire means that the scheme of getting that object has already appeared in our mind. Very powerful mechanisms are set to work. I go into the supermarket, for instance, and see something I want. If I do not have the money, then I start thinking about how to get the money. When I start making plans of how to get it, lust enter my intelligence. After that, a number of various psychological mechanisms turn on because intelligence sets to work on our sense, and that's the end. Calm has developed the mind. First, there is a desire that appears simply in the mind, sanga. Then that desire appears in the intelligence, and then it appears in our senses, and that's it. Calm is also a huge burst of energy. Have you noticed what a surge of energy we feel when calm appears? The days have been dragging slowly. You have been feeling bored with no desire for anything. You have been feeling depressed, but calm appears and you spring to life. Then we get fed up with that particular sense object, and again the days are dragging and boring. And then there is a new object again. There is a new calm and a new life. Now, when we are trying to achieve that sense object, when we are trying to get what we need, we inevitably encounter obstacles. To destroy these obstacles, we need anger. It is a special energy that destroys obstacles. If something stands between me and the object of my desire, I'm ready to destroy it all. Who has dared to prevent me? Who has dared to come between me and what I want, what I love? In my anger, I'm prepared to do anything. This gang of highwaymen that Raghunath Das Goswami speak of consists of Kam, Krodh, anger, Lobh, Moh, Mad, and Matsarya. First is lust, the most respected progenitor of the clan. Kam gives rise to Krodh. Another name for Krodh is Kam Anuja. Kam Anuja means Kam's younger brother. Krodh means anger. The river of anger begins to surge. We start screaming. We start destroying. We clench fists and our eyes turn red. This energy can sweep anything on its way. Another result of calm is when we satisfy calm, then love, greed appear. If calm is not satisfied, then there is growth. One is outraged and ready to kill everyone. And if we satisfy calm, then there is a greed. Greed is another kinsman, the fat guy in their gang. When this gang comes to you, you should know them by their look. The calm that has grown fat is love, greed. The Hitopadesh says that due to love, we lose all shame. When this greed of satisfied desire develops, we cannot stop it. And there is a third result that is not mentioned among the six sins or six vices. If the obstacles are too strong for our anger to remove, then fear comes. Sometimes Krishna speaks about it. He said, with raga bhaya krodha, raga means calm or lust, bhaya means fear, and krodh means anger. These are three emotions associated with each other. Accordingly, as a result of fear, greed, and anger, we are seized by illusion, moha, identified ourselves with our possessions. So then we will stop here and we will read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. We are reading from the volume number 3 and the chapter title is Swami Invites the Hippies. I will read few lines. The boy just started at Prabhupada as if giving an ultimatum. Unless Swamiji came immediately, there would be a riot and Swamiji would be to blame. Prabhupada spoke as if preparing to do what the boy wanted. Yes, I'm prepared. But nobody went and there was no riot. So we will continue. Usually during the kirtan, at least one dancer would carry on in a narcissistic, egoistic way, occasionally becoming lewd to the point where Prabhupada would ask the person to stop. One evening before Srila Prabhupada had come down from his apartment, a girl in a miniskirt began wailing and greeting in the temple during kirtan. When one of the devotees went upstairs and told Prabhupada, he replied, "That's all right. Let her use her energy for Krishna. I'm coming soon and I will see for myself," unquote. When Prabhupada arrived and started another kirtan, the girl, who was very skinny, again began to wriggle and gyrate. Prabhupada opened his eyes and saw her. He frowned and glanced at some of his disciples, indicating his displeasure. Taking the girl aside, one of the women escorted her out. A few minutes later, the girl returned, wearing slacks and dancing in a more reserved style. Prabhupada was sitting on his dais, lecturing to a full house, when a fat girl who had been sitting on the window seat suddenly stood up and began hollering at him. Quote, "Are you just going to sit there?" She yelled. Quote, "What are you going to do now? Come on." Aren't you going to say something? What are you going to do? Who are you? Unquote. Her accent was so sudden and her speech so violent that no one in the temple responded. Unangered, Prabhupada sat very quietly. He appeared hurt. Only the devotee sitting closest to him heard him say softly, as if to himself, "It is the darkest of darkness." Unquote. Another night, while Prabhupada was lecturing, a boy came up and sat on the dais beside him. I remember one time in the old temple, we were sitting and chanting, and one person came. And on Sunday feast, we keep the gate open. So he went right up to the Krishna's lotus feet and touched before we can do anything, because it's happened so suddenly. What can be done? The boy faced out toward the audience and interpreted Prabhupada. Quote, "I would like to say something now." Unquote. Prabhupada politely said, quote, "Wait until after the class, then we have questions." The boy waited for a few minutes, still sitting on the dais right beside Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada continued to lecture. But again the boy interrupted. Good. "I got something to say. I want to say what I have to say now." Unquote. The devotees in the audience looked up, astonished, thinking that Swamiji would handle the matter and not wanting to cause disturbance. None of them did anything. They simply sat while the boy began talking incoherently. Then Prabhupada picked up his kartals, quote, "All right, let us have kirtan," unquote. The boy sat in the same place throughout the kirtan, looking crazily, sometimes menacingly, at Prabhupada. After half an hour, the kirtan stopped. Prabhupada cut an apple into small pieces, as was his custom. He then placed the paring knife and the piece of apple in his right hand and held his hand out to the boy. The boy looked at Prabhupada, then down at the apple and knife. The room became silent. Prabhupada sat motionless, smiling slightly at the boy. After a long, tense moment, the boy reached out. A sigh rose from the audience as the boy chose the pieces of apple from Prabhupada's open hand. Haridas explained in his word as follows. "I used to watch how Swamiji would handle things. It wasn't easy. To me, that was a real test of his power and understanding. How to handle these people, not to alienate or antagonize or stir them up to create more trouble. He would turn their energy so that before they knew it, they were calm, like when you pat a baby and it stops crying. Swamiji had a way of doing that with words, with the intonation of his voice, with his patience to let them carry on for a certain period of time. Let them work it out, let it out even. I guess he realized that the devotee just couldn't say, quote, listen, when you come to temple, you can't behave this way, unquote. It was a delicate situation there. Often someone would say, I'm God, and they would get an insight or hallucination from their drugs. They would try to steal the spotlight. They wanted to be heard, and you could feel an anger against the Swami from people like that. Sometimes they would speak inspired and poetic for a while, but they couldn't sustain it, and their speech would become gibberish. And the Swami was not one to simply pacify people. He wasn't going to coddle them. He would say, quote, what do you mean? If you are God, then you have to be all-knowing. You have to have the attributes of God. Are you omniscient and omnipotent? He would then name all the characteristics that one would have to be an avatar, to be God. He would rationally prove the person wrong, and he had superior knowledge, and he would rationally explain to them, quote, if you are God, can you do this? Do you have this power? Unquote. Sometimes people would take it as challenge and would try to have a verbal battle with the Swami. The audience attention would then swing to the disturbing individual, the person who was grabbing the spotlight. Sometimes it was very difficult. I used to sit there and wonder, quote, how is he going to handle this guy? This one is really a problem, unquote. But Swamiji was hard to defeat. Even if he couldn't convince the person, he convinced the other people in the crowd so that the energy of the room would change and would tend to quiet the person. Swamiji would win the audience by showing them that this person didn't know what he was talking about. And the person would feel the vibration of the room change, that the audience was no longer listening or believing his spell. So the person then finally will shut up. So Swamiji would remove the audience rather than the person. He would do it without crushing the person. He would do it by superior intelligence, but also with a lot of compassion. When I saw him do these things, then I realized he was a great teacher and a great human being. He had the sensitivity not to injure a person physically or emotionally, so that when the person sat down and shut up, he wouldn't be doing it in a defeat or anger. He wouldn't be hurt. He would just be outwitted by the Swami. Even while translating in the privacy of his room, Srila Prabhupada was interrupted by disturbance. Once, police car and ambulance sirens screaming, lights flashing converged beneath his window after the Hell's Angel has started a fight in the digger store in the next building. On another occasion, about 1:30 a.m., while Prabhupada was dictating teaching of Lord Chaitanya, a girl repeatedly knocked and called at Prabhupada's door. At first, he ignored the interruptions. Since his arrival in San Francisco, he had completed many pages for this important book. Lord Chaitanya's discussion with Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, Ramanand Roy and others explored many Krishna conscious topics mentioned only briefly in Bhagavad Gita. In the West, almost no one knew about these teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and now Srila Prabhupada intended to compile this teaching in one volume, providing the most complete presentations of Bhakti Yoga ever introduced in English. Haribol. Such a book would give great substance to the Krishna consciousness movement, but now his solitary concentration was being interrupted by knocking at his door and a Swami's voice calling. Getting up from his desk, Prabhupada went to the front room but did not open the door. Quote, "Who is there?" Unquote. A young woman answered, quote, "I want to speak to you." Unquote. Look at this at 1:30 in the morning. Quote, "Come back later in the morning." Unquote, Prabhupada told her. He knew that in San Francisco, just as in New York, he would not always be able to write peacefully. Preaching in America meant having to tolerate justice and crazy call in the middle of the night, tearing one away from aesthetic concentration on the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. The lost souls of Haights-Ashbury, with their illusions of knowledge, their cries for help, their arrogant challenges, pulled his attention away from his mission of translating and commenting on the scriptures. Now, alone in his apartment, speaking through the locked door, Prabhupada told his intruder that he had work to do and she should go away. He promised he would see her later that day. He was really to speak with the hippies all day, but the early morning hours were the special time for his literary work. Preaching face to face to the conditioned soul was important, and he had come here to preach, but he had picked these early hours to speak intimately to the whole world through his books without any disturbance. The girl, however, continued pounding and calling until Prabhupada finally opened the door. There, standing in the hallway, he saw a teenage hippie with a glassy stare and deranged appearance. He asked her what she wanted. She remained tensely silent. Quote, "Speak," unquote, he told her. She stepped into his room. He saw her helpless, a victim in the ocean of Maya. And he asked her repeatedly what she wanted. Finally, the girl stared at him with widened eyes and exclaimed, "Look, Mahaullah." Haribol. Prabhupada decided to awaken Mukunda, who lived down the hall. He stepped barefoot into the hallway. The girl followed, shutting the self-locking door behind her. Now he was locked out of his apartment. She continued to stare at him defiantly in the bare, unfriendly surrounding of a corridor of locked door at 1 in the morning. This was why the Babajis of Vrindavan stayed in their little cottages chanting the holy name to avoid being bothered by ungodly people. into the parenthesis, the Babajis, of course, never even dreamed of these bizarre intrusions from the psychedelic San Francisco night. Parenthesis over. At Mukunda's door, Prabhupada began pounding and calling loudly, Mukunda, Mukunda. Mukunda awoke and opened the door, astonished to see his spiritual master standing barefoot in the hallway. A wide-eyed young girl standing a few feet behind. Yet Prabhupada remained grave and aloof. Quote, "This girl came to my door," unquote, he began. He explained briefly what had happened and what should now be done. He did not appear angry or harassed by the girl, and he indicated that Mukunda should deal kindly with her. Mukunda remembered when Prabhupada had been driven out of his New York Bowery loft by his roommate David Allen, who had gone mad on LSD. Then also, Prabhupada had remained cool-headed, though caught by a dangerous, unawakened circumstance. Mukunda went downstairs and awoke Hayagriva, who had a key to Prabhupada's apartment. Srila Prabhupada then returned to his room and to his dictation of the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. Mukunda saw the girl down to the street and admonished her not to bother an elderly gentleman like the Swami at such an hour. Staring at Mukunda, she said, quote, "You are not ready," unquote, and walked away. At 7 o'clock, when Prabhupada came down to the temple for the morning class, the girl was sitting in the audience in a calmer state of mind. She apologized. Later in the day, Prabhupada repeated the story in good humor, recounting how he had several times asked the girl to speak. He opened his eyes wide, imitating her expression, and said, "Look, Mohalla," and laughed. Quote, "We should go for a walk at 6:30, Srila Prabhupada says one morning, and you can drive me to the park." Several devotees accompanied him to Golden Gate Park's Stowe Lake. They knew the park well and led Srila Prabhupada on a scenic walk around the lake, over a bridge, through forest and closed paths, and across a small rivulet, hoping to please him with nature's beauty. Okay. As he walked, striding quickly, he would point to a tree or stop to examine a flower. "What is this tree?" he would ask. "What is this flower?" Although his disciples were usually at a loss to answer. Quote, "When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passed through the forest of Vrindavan," unquote, he said, quote, "all the plant, trees and creepers were delighted to see him and rejoiced in his presence. The plant life, there is like that in the spiritual sky, fully conscious," unquote. Quote, "And these trees, Swamiji, how conscious are they?" Unquote. Quote, "Oh, the spirit soul is there," unquote, Prabhupada says. Quote, "But the consciousness has been arrested temporarily. Perception is more limited," unquote. Whatever Prabhupada saw, he saw through the eyes of the scripture. And his comments on the most ordinary things were full of transcendental instructions. So when we visit the holy place, Vrindavan or the Braj, we should see through the eyes of the scripture. Then and then we will relish the Brajadham. Otherwise, by our physical eyes, we won't be able to see anything. Only the filthy gutters on the side of the road and smells. Haribol. As he walked, he reflected aloud, quote, "Those who want to see God must first have the qualification to see the God. They must be purified, just like the cloud is now covering the sun. They say, oh, the sun is not out, but the sun is there. Only our eyes are covered," unquote. Like tour guides, the boys led Prabhupada to the more picturesque areas. They came upon swan gliding on the lake. Quote, Srimad Bhagavatam, unquote, Prabhupada says, quote, compares devotees to swans and literature about Lord Krishna to beautiful clear lakes, unquote. The non-devotees, he said, were like crown attracted by the rubbish of mundane topics. Walking over a gravel path, he stopped and drew their attention. Quote, look at the pebbles. As many pebbles there are that many universes. And in each universe, there are innumerable living entities. So today I post that everything that we see in the creation created by Lord Sri Krishna. Very similar message. The devotees delighted in bringing Swamiji to the rhododendron glen, its big bushes completely covered with white and pink flowers. And they felt privileged to see Krishna through Swamiji's eyes. The next morning when Prabhupada again wanted to go to the park, more devotees accompanied him. They had heard from the others how Swamiji had displayed a different mood while walking. Again the boys were ready to lead him along new trails around the lake, but without announcing a change in plans. He walked up and down the macadam road beside the lake. Prabhupada and his followers came upon a flock of sleeping ducks, awakened by the sound of people walking on the path. The ducks began quacking, moving their wings and walking away. When a few devotees hurried ahead to shoo the ducks from Prabhupada's path, the ducks began making sound of grouching and grumbling. Quote, move, you ducks, unquote, one devotee said. Quote, you are disturbing Swamiji, unquote. Prabhupada said quietly, quote, as we are thinking, they are disturbing us. They are thinking we are disturbing them. Haribol, unquote. So Prabhupada stopped beneath a large tree and pointed to some bird dropping on the ground. What does this mean? He asked. Turning to a new boy who stood beside him, Prabhupada's face was serious. The boy blushed. I don't know what it means. Prabhupada remained thoughtful, waiting for an explanation. The devotees gathered around him, looking intently down at the bird droppings. The boy thought, that Swami might be expecting him to decipher some hidden meaning in the pattern of the droppings. The way people read the future in tea leaves. He felt he should say something good. Is the U excreta, the defecations of U birds, unquote. Prabhupada smiled and turned toward the others for an answer. They were also silent. Quote, it means, unquote, said Prabhupada, that these birds, into parentheses, the pronouns the word bars, have lived in the same tree for more than 2 weeks. He laughed, quote, even the birds are attached to their apartments, unquote. As they passed the supple board courts and the old man playing checkers, Prabhupada stopped and turned to the boys. Just see, he said, quote, old people in this country do not know what to do. So they play like children, wasting their last days. We should be meant for developing Krishna consciousness. Oh, we went 3-4 minutes over. I'm extremely sorry. The children are grown and gone away. So this is a natural time for spiritual cultivation. But no, they get some cat or dog, and instead of serving God, they serve dog. It is most unfortunate, but they will not listen. Their ways are set. Therefore, we are speaking to the youth who are searching. Hare Krishna. So we will stop here, and before the devotees leaves, we would like to offer our humble obeisances at the desk of their feet for their kindness to join early in the morning in giving up their soft bed and nice sleep. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kipashindu bhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. But as we see in Prabhupada life, the important thing that we need to do in the early morning hours. So this is the best thing, that we are waking up at 2 o'clock and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Sometime, one devotee wrote me today, the last Hare was not prominent sometime. And then, but I didn't read the message right away. So I feel bad that maybe I may have chanted the broken name. But sometime when you chant in a quiet place, you go so deep in the meditation. Actually, I wrote to him that I didn't know even that I'm breathing. It's so sublime in the morning to chant the holy name with very nice feeling in our heart and seeing a wonderful form of the divine couple. So it's very difficult. I apologize. But anyway, then he wrote me again, then you are chanting now nicely, Prabhu, something like that. So what can be done? We have to be more attentive, and I will remain more attentive. I'll try my best. So, anybody has any question, comment, corrections, or chastisement before we end our session? I always give 10-15 seconds. If there is nothing come, then we should end. Pin drop silence. Huh? What a nice meditation on the divine couple. That we don't remember even where we are. Hare Krishna. So I think everybody must be in a trance by chanting 3-4 hours very attentively, looking at the beautiful form of the divine couple that we hanker to see in the material world, right? When we open our eyes, we don't see them again. Hare Krishna. So I think I'm gonna look for the right time, rain forecast, something, and